Good morning, sweet mamas. I just wanted to pop in for our Monday Motherhood Moment and share today about a topic that was not on my mind for this week, but it is now. And so one of those, like I have my topics sort of thought out for, several weeks or maybe like 6 to 8 weeks in advance. And then when I come up on that week, I always just wait to see if that's what I'm really supposed to speak about. So I was originally going to talk about friendship in motherhood and how we take risks as women, how important it is to have friends, and my journey of developing and cultivating sweet friendships. And I wanted to do that, but I'm going to do that next week, I think, so, or in the few coming weeks. But this week, because of something that happened yesterday, I'm changing the topic to be avoiding power struggles with your children. And I have a lot of background in getting into power struggles with my children, and therefore I have a lot of knowledge about how to eventually get out of them and avoid them. So, hey Gina, I'm so glad you're here. So let's just talk about what causes a power struggle. First of all, I want to lay the premise down that when we get in a power struggle with our children, nobody wins. Even if somebody gets their way, no one wins. It's a battle. We've lost the view that we're on the same page and the same team as our children. We start to treat them like our enemy that we need to win over, as opposed to coming alongside our child, that we need to do that more. We need to always remember in the forefront of our mind that we're all on the same team. I tell my kids, we're on Team Scott, and we're all on team, and then I fill in the name, whatever their name would be. Like, say my son's name is Joe. We're all on Team Joe. Like, we're with you. We're not against you. And so as moms, we need to keep that in mind, that we are one of the only allies. Our kids will really have like rock solid ally in their mother. Hopefully that's the way it goes. And so we want to keep the family on the same team. And when we get into power struggles, we lose sight of that, just the sense that we're all on the same team. So that's one key there, is to remember that nobody's going to win, even if you get your way or they get their way. Nobody wins, and that we are all on the same team. But how do we avoid these power struggles? So for one thing, I have developed on my website, in what I call the vault. It's a vault of like freebies. I developed an avoiding power struggles tip sheet, and another one that's like 10 keys to avoiding power struggles. And if you subscribe, you can get those on my website. It's pattyhscott.com /library, and it'll ask you to subscribe, and then you'll get a weekly newsletter with me, which I always include stuff that's not on these videos and not on my website, and those just to bless subscribers with something extra. But if you don't want to subscribe and you don't want another letter in your email inbox, I get that. You can just tell me here in the Intentional Motherhood group, and because you're in the community, I'm glad to just give this to you free. But anyway, just let me know if you want one of those. But basically, I'm going to go over some of the keys here. And why I'm doing this is because yesterday, I'll tell you a little story about what happened in our home. My son was feeling a little grumpy. He's a teenager, so that kind of comes and goes with the territory, right? I mean, well, humanity, we all get grumpy, but teenagers tend to have an extra dose every so often. So, and I was thinking about, and I'll be writing about this week, but how I used to go fishing with my granddad in Maine, and we would go out early. If I was really good, I'd be allowed to go quietly on the boat with him. And one of the keys I remember about fishing is, first of all, besides having to sit very quietly, is that you have to have good bait. And when you have good bait, the fish bite. And so it's kind of like our kids learn growing up with us what baits us. They learn, and it's not because they're mean or malicious. I mean, of course, we're all sinners, but they're not trying to intentionally get even with us, although sometimes they are angry and that is what they're doing, but mainly they're trying to get their way. As all humans in their sinful nature, we try to get our way, right? And so but we find out what works with our moms. And so by the time your kid is a teenager, they've got this thing dialed down to a science, and they know what hooked you. So yesterday, my son was complaining because we were having a sweet family that we love, we haven't seen in a while, over for lunch after church. And he was griping that, how's he supposed to get his homework done? Which, by the way, he laid around all day Saturday, so there could have been a moment there. But how's he supposed to get his homework done, which he had planned to do Sunday afternoon, when we're having this family over and interrupting his schedule? And you know how it goes. And he's not a terrible person. I don't want to paint a bad picture, but this was just one of his moments. And I was just kind of enduring it all the way through before church and telling him, look, we arranged this so it was convenient for you, so we'd interfere with you going out Friday night, but we are going to have people over. Our family is a hospitable family. We're going to welcome people in. It's going to be inconvenient to all of us at times. So Anyway, I just kind of wrote it out. But when we got home from church, he decided, hey, after they come, we can go to the movies. And I'm like, don't think we're going to the movies because you have homework. Oh, no, no, you know, and all of a sudden the table turned, and that got under my nerves the way he was doing it, because it was like, he goes, now I'm not even going to tell you when I have homework because you're going to do this kind of thing. That was the hook, the bait, right? The bait. This fish went, you know, and just bit onto that bait. And I went with it, and I could feel even the tug. Like, we know when we've gotten into a tug of war, when our kids are pulling on one side and we're pulling back, and our goal changes from helping them, being their guide, being their support, to no, 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 I'm winning here. And that's what happened between the two of us. And I was like, oh, well, if you're not going to tell me when your homework is, then blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, if you do that, then I'm going to do this, you know, and we're starting to throw down these like, oh yeah, well, if that, then that. I mean, and it was not pretty. And it went on for about 10 to 15 minutes. And both of us are mature enough, thank Jesus, that we stopped. I went to my room, he went to his room. Actually, he went to his room first, which was super cool, because we've been trying to work on that for both of us, that when he and I, in particular in this house, we're the two that can engage in these things more than the others. And we just retreated to our own rooms, healed up. I prayed. What I did first was I went on the computer and thought about canceling his phone subscription, which we pay for, but I didn't do that. So then I started praying, and then I went to his room, apologized to him, and we talked, and he apologized, we hugged, we made up, we restored. So that's an example of how to handle power struggle. It's an example of when a power struggle occurs, what can go wrong, but also what can go right. Because as soon as we acknowledge in our heart, I'm in a power struggle here, I'm no longer an ally, an advocate for my child, I'm now their opponent, and I'm trying to win instead of help, instead of support, instead of be a shepherd and a guide and a boundary keeper. And you know, we keep our boundaries with our kids for their sake, not because we want to dominate over them. So I then, as soon as you find out, it's like you're holding the rope, you drop the rope. You ignore the struggle, not the child. You get yourself to a place where you can calm down. And with a younger child, we can distract them away from a struggle a lot of times. With older children, we need to say something like, I'm no longer fighting with you. I'm not going to keep fighting. We're going to have to calm down, and we'll talk about this when we're both calm. Because whenever you're escalated in your emotions, you can't think straight. Your brain goes into fight flight, and you're no longer functioning from your creative space. You're no longer functioning from a place where you can find compassion and be the best mom that you can be. So you want to drop that power struggle as soon as possible, let things simmer, and then return to it with your rational mind, and when they're no longer in their heightened emotional well, and then you can come to some sort of common ground. So I did go back and talk to my son, like, I was sorry that I acted this way. It was a little difficult with you, you know, flapping around the homework stuff all morning and complaining, and then when you all of a sudden want to switch the tables. And we just had a good conversation, and it was really good, and he acknowledged his part. If he were younger, I probably wouldn't have had it as intellectual as a conversation, but I would have owned my part anyway, and then asked him to examine his own heart, and then we hug and pray and kind of move forward. So I just wanted to discuss this with you all, because I'm sure in your home power struggles happen. Power is an issue in families. Who has the power? Kids are seeking power, which is not a bad thing. They need to have some appropriate ability to make choices, and I discussed that on the sheet that I have for you guys. So anyway, this week I hope we can kind of consider power struggles, how to stay out of them, how to stay as allies and guides in our children's lives, as opposed to getting into these things that are just not productive. And I sure appreciate each of you. And I wanted to tell you, we have a bunch of new people joining us, and it's so funny, like a number of them are all named Sarah. So I say welcome to all the Sarahs and all the other names as well. And we're so grateful you're here, and just really glad this community has just been such a sweetness for me. And I hope it's a sweetness for all of you as well. And we'll see you next week.
Like my mom's videos?
Then subscribe below.